Welcome to the Off the Ball podcast. I'm your host, Clay Tillman, and on today's episode, we're going to be breaking down the Chiefs versus Falcons game from last night. We're also going to be talking about Andy Dalton stepping in for the benching of Bryce Young and putting on an absolute performance. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the Rams versus 49ers game as well. Let's first go through Sunday Night Football Week 3, and it was a fantastic game. It was exciting, and each team performed at a great level. Patrick Mahomes, 217 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, and he does what he does usually. The thing about Patrick Mahomes this season is his inconsistency and his playmaking, his choice of play. He has been very poor in his accuracy, and which has led him to throwing a lot of a lot of interceptions this season. And a lot of it has to do with him. It doesn't have to do with the team. It's just him throwing the ball and him being risky. Now, Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback. Don't get me wrong. He's one of the greatest to ever do it. But he's been very inconsistent in that sort of category of accuracy this season that we really haven't seen from him in the past seasons. He has thrown a pick in at least each game through week 3. He has done it, but he has won. They're 3-0. He has won for them, even though he has turned the ball over and has had very poor playmaking. Very poor playmaking, and freedom of choice. And one guy for the Chiefs that has stuck out really, really vividly is Rashee Rice. He has been excellent this season. He had 12 receptions last night for 110 yards and 1 touchdown. He is an absolute star. Now, I've said this in a previous podcast. He's no Jamar Chase. He's no Cooper Kupp. He's no Devontae Adams. He's no Justin Jefferson. But, man, he's explosive. He's young. He's quick. He's a star. He's a big reason the Chiefs have succeeded, and he is their wide receiver 1. He is their receiver 1. He really is. And in previous seasons, it's usually Travis Kelce. But this season, Travis Kelce has been a ghost. He really has. He had 30 yards in this game, 4 receptions, but he has been a nobody. He has been invaluable for them, and he hasn't been himself. He really hasn't, and I don't know what the reason is. I don't know if it's him not getting open or if it's just Patrick Mahomes preferring to throw to Rashee Rice, because Rashee Rice is performing at a higher level, and he's quicker, he's younger. Travis Kelce is getting older. Travis Kelce is a Hall of Fame tight end, one of the best to ever do it, but they need to move on. They moved on with Tyreek Hill, and Rashee Rice has taken that spot at an absolute remarkable level. He really has. He's, like I said, he's quick, and he had 12 receptions. 12 receptions in last night's game. Unbelievable. And one thing that I really want to note is that the Chiefs' defense is excellent. They have Nick Bolton, who led the league in tackles in the postseason last year. They have Trent McDuffie. They have Chris Jones, a great pass rusher. They have pieces on the defense, and I've said this multiple times in different podcasts. The Chiefs are a perfect team. Not only they're perfect in their record so far, but they've won Super Bowls. They have a perfect coach in Andy Reid, who's a great coach, one of the best to ever do it. They have a quarterback who's insane, and they have the pieces. When Tyreek Hill left, there was a lot of questions roaming around in the air if the Chiefs can succeed without Tyreek Hill. They can. Because Patrick Mahomes is, number 1, is their quarterback. 2, they have a good coaching staff. 3, they have pieces. Their offense great chemistry already, and Xavier Worthy already explosive in his rookie season. He's going to be such a great piece in the near future, if not in the remainder of the season. Rashee Rice is going to be a star from now on, and Travis Kelce is doing his thing. They don't need him to win. They don't. Maybe back in the day, last year, they really needed him, but this year, they really don't need Travis Kelce. They don't. They really don't, because they already have the pieces that will succeed without him on the field, like Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Isaiah Pacheco. I know he didn't play, and I don't know how long he'll be out for, but people like that, and their defense, and Chris Jones, absolute beast. Trent McDuffie, Nick Bolton, unbelievable, and their offensive line is incredible. And Creed Humphreys, and they just prove perfection. They prove it, and they show it on the turf. They do it week by week, and they are the best team in the NFL. They really are. One problem I have with the Chiefs is they rely, this year especially, they rely too much on field goals. Harrison Buckner, he is a fantastic kicker. He's one of the best in the league today, but they rely too much on him. There has been too many close games. Actually, every game so far this season, they have barely won. Ravens, they win within a touchdown. Last week against the Bengals, they win within a point. In this game, they barely win as well. Their defense was a really big reason they won yesterday, and as well as their kicker and Harrison Buckner. Now, they can't rely on field goals. This will not win them another Super Bowl, relying on field goals. They're doing it in the first few weeks and within week 3, through week 3, but once it comes week 6 and so on, there's going to be teams who are legitimate. We're going to see the legitimacy of some contender teams like the 49ers, like the Vikings potentially, the Bills, I would say the Cowboys, but they're in a slump right now. But there's going to be teams, I'm just naming a few, but there's going to be teams in the postseason. I doubt the Vikings will be a threat in the postseason, but right now they're looking like a threat. It's unbelievable. Nobody expected it. But there's going to be teams once it comes week 7, week 8, that are going to be threats. And when the Chiefs have to play them, they can't rely on kicking. They're going to have to be able to drive down the field and rely on that. They're going to have to rely on finishing drives. And in this, so far through week 3, the Chiefs have not shown that. They have not shown that. They've relied on their kicking, but they are on their knees and they're praying that Harrison Buckner will win the game for them. And he's done that through multiple times. Had a pair of field goals against the Bengals, which secured them the win. And in this game, some clutch field goals that ended up giving them a win. Let's move on with the Falcons. I really love Kirk Cousins. I said this in the last podcast. Not only is Kirk Cousins a great guy, but he's consistent. I said this last week. Kirk Cousins is one of the most consistent quarterbacks in the NFL today. Last night, he had 230 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. But what makes him so consistent is that after last night's game, Kirk Cousins becomes the 4th fastest quarterback to reach 40,000 yards. He did it in 153 games. The only quarterbacks ever to do this is Matt Ryan, a Falcon as well, Matthew Stafford, and Drew Brees. 3 future Hall of Famers, if you consider Matthew Stafford a potential Hall of Famer. I think he gets in it potentially. But Matt Ryan and Drew Brees are secured Hall of Famers. And Kirk Cousins is the 4th fastest quarterback to reach 40,000 yards. He's done this with the Commanders. He did it with the Vikings and now on the Falcons. And he's had multiple 4,000-yard games. And he just passed Joe Montana in passing touchdowns for 274 touchdowns. Unbelievable. And Joe Montana is one of the greatest to ever do it. A late 90s great quarterback for the 49ers and Joe Montana. Everybody knows his name if you know football. Everybody knows his name. And Kirk Cousins just surpassed him in passing touchdowns. He's consistent. He's done it his whole career, and he's doing it with the Falcons. I know the Falcons lost last night, but they get a top-tier quarterback in someone like Kirk Cousins, who did really well for the Vikings, brought them to a few playoffs, and he's going to do it with the Falcons. He may not do it exceptionally well this season just because he's getting used to the Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, the defense. But they have their pieces. The Falcons have their pieces. Arthur Smith, I think he's a pretty good coach. Drake London and Kyle Pitts, I think they're really solid receivers. Bijan Robinson, I said it on Wednesday last week that he's a top 5 running back. I think he moves up this week. We'll get into that a little bit on Wednesday, but they're great. And one player that did really well yet last night was Darnell Mooney. They picked him up in the offseason. He was a Bear. He did not fit well with the Bears just because the Bears, Justin Fields, he didn't fit well with the Bears. Justin Fields didn't fit with the Bears. And I'm not even going to call Justin Fields a bust anymore. I'm not. He was with the wrong team. He's with the Steelers. Now, the Steelers are the weirdest franchise in my opinion. But he's with the Steelers, and they're 3-0. He's thrown for over 500 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. He's supposed to be the backup for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Mike Tomlin can do anything. He's never had a losing season. He did it with Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett. He brought his team to the Steelers with some average quarterbacks, and he's doing it now with an average quarterback in Justin Fields. I honestly love it. I love seeing Justin Fields succeed. He was just with a terrible franchise who does not know how to progressively build up and work around a quarterback. They've never done it in their 100 years of being a team. But I'm not going to be ranting on the Bears for right now. We could do that later, but Justin Fields has done it with the Steelers. He's doing it with the Steelers. He's doing really well with them. And they're undefeated. They're one of the few undefeated teams. And Justin Fields is their back. Is the horse that is leading. That is leading and helping their team. It's unbelievable. But yeah, Darnell Mooney comes from the Bears, comes to a better team with better core and a better quarterback in Kirk Cousins, and is performing well. I think Darnell Mooney is a great wide receiver. He's a great piece for the Atlanta Falcons, and he showed it in today's game, having 8 receptions on 66 yards. Same with Drake London. I think he's a solid wide receiver. I thought he was going to be a star this year. I think he could potentially be a star. I think he's the star of their team when we're talking about receivers. He had 6 receptions, 67 yards, and 1 touchdown. And they did well offensively until the end. Bijan did not have a good game. He had 31 yards on an insane amount of carries. He averaged 1.9 yards per carry, which is terrible. But at the end, it was 4th and 1. And I stated this a few minutes ago. Chiefs defense is unbelievable. So it's 4th and 1, and they're going to hand it off to Bijan Robinson. What we think is they're going to run it up the middle. No. They run it on the outside. Terrible play call. You do not run a 4th and 1 on the outside against a Chiefs defense. And who got the tackle? Nick Bolton. Like I just stated, he led the league in tackles in the postseason. And he came in clutch at the end, tackling Bijan Robinson because they run on the outside. A terrible play call. And it's one of the reasons they lost the game. They could have kicked a field goal. They could have kicked a field goal to potentially win it. But no. They run it on the outside, and Nick Bolton comes in and tackles him for loss. And they lose. Bijan did not have a good game. And the Falcons' problem is this year, they're 3 for 17 on third down in the last 2 weeks. 3 for 17. Pitiful. You can't do that on a squad who has, this offseason, really built up their offense and really built up their defense. Now, the defense doesn't matter in this scenario, but really built up their offense, getting a new quarterback and Kirk Cousins, who I say consistently, he's consistent, but they're 3 and 17 on third downs. Not good. Not a good look for them so far. Their O-line is injured. And in yesterday's game, 2 of their best O-line players who has helped them create lanes for Bijan Robinson and keep Kirk in the pocket for a long period of time, and Drew Dalman and Caleb McGarry were out in the second quarter, and it really hurt them. Bijan Robinson wasn't able to get the lanes he usually gets, which is a reason he only averaged 1.9 yards a carry in yesterday's game. So they're gonna need their O-line to step up, and they're gonna want these players to come back. Because if that's the case, they have Bijan Robinson, who's a top 5 running back right now. They have Bijan, who can run up the middle, who's big. I think he's one of the most athletic players in today's game. And they keep Kirk Cousins, who's accurate and can stay in the pocket, because Kirk Cousins is not a mobile quarterback, so you're going to want him to stay in the pocket for as long as possible. Keep them, and they'll be straight. But with the loss of these 2 O-line players, it really hurt them. Hurt their run game and hurt Kirk Cousins, especially at the end when Bijan could not get the first down because they ran on the outside. And yeah, that's about it for that game. That's the breakdown. Chiefs win big. It was a fun game to watch. I really enjoyed it. I think these 2 teams are obviously potentially going to be a powerhouse once it comes to the postseason. I think the Falcons really need to continue to do what they're doing. I think they're doing great things. They played a great team, a team that just won the Super Bowl, and the Chiefs, I'm not surprised that they lost, but they could have beaten them. They really could. They could have beaten him. Justin Simmons had his 6th pick in his career against Patrick Mahomes. Nobody's ever done that. Nobody has had more picks against the same player more than Justin Simmons. But this team in the Falcons, I trust them. I think they'll win the division. I think they're really good. And the Chiefs, they're the Chiefs. They're perfect. Let's move on. Bryce Young and Andy Dalton. This has been in the media for about a few days now. Bryce Young gets benched. He had a terrible first 2 weeks in the 2024-25 season. And last year, he just did not perform well whatsoever for a player who's a first overall pick, who's a Heisman Trophy winner. And a lot of people were like, man, his O-line is terrible. He doesn't have the weapons. And then in this season, he's just been bad. He's been terrible. And they decided to bench him. And they bring in veteran Andy Dalton, who is a fantastic player back in his prime on the Bengals, comes in, and he proves that, in my opinion, Bryce Young is a bust. Everybody's screaming listening to this right now. What are you talking about, Clay? Bryce Young, it's his second year. Andy Dalton has been playing in the league for 10 plus seasons. Bryce Young is a first overall pick. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. He played for Nick Saban. Is he not NFL ready? After winning a Heisman, after being the number 1 overall pick, is it too early to call him a bust? Maybe, because Justin Fields is on a new team and he's performing well. But O-line, weapons. Andy Dalton comes on and scores 4 touchdowns. More than Bryce Young has scored this whole season. In my opinion, Andy Dalton proves that Bryce Young is a bust. Andy Dalton proved it tonight or yesterday. He did. He was accurate. He was able to get his players down the field. Deontay Johnson had a good game. Chuba Hubbard had a good game. He made his team look great. He did. They scored over 30 points against the Raiders with a good defense in Max Crosby. And Andy Dalton had 4 touchdown passes against a team who doesn't have a good wide receiver core, who has a bad offensive line. And they do have a bad offensive line, but Andy Dalton was able to succeed through it. It's not that Andy Dalton is a veteran. It's not that he's been in the league for so long. He's a backup on the Carolina Panthers. It's because Bryce Young does not fit with the Carolina Panthers. I don't believe he's NFL ready. Maybe he'll go to a new team and be very good. We saw it with Baker Mayfield. We're kind of seeing it with Justin Fields, like I've said. Maybe. But for someone who's a first overall pick and he's played this bad, right now I'm going to call him a bust. But I may not keep it that way. But right now, Bryce Young is a bust. Let's move on. The 49ers versus Rams game. I thought this was very interesting. This was a close game. Brock Purdy played to the best ability he could have played. He had 292 yards and 3 touchdowns. And a surprise from the wide receiver 3 position is Juwan Jennings. Had 11 receptions, 175 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Unbelievable performance. The best performance of his career. And he's a wide receiver 3. Let me say that again. A wide receiver 3. He's the best wide receiver 3 in the league. He played amazing. 11 receptions, 175 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Had all of Brock Purdy's receiving or passing touchdowns. Unbelievable performance. He Randy Mossed one dude. He was playing like an absolute star. He was playing out of his mind. But they lost. They choked towards the end. And I wouldn't say it was Matthew Stafford doing it all. Matthew Stafford doesn't have his 2 best receivers in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. But Matthew Stafford did it. 221 yards, 1 touchdown. And this is why a lot of people have Matthew Stafford potentially being a future Hall of Famer. He was with the Lions, and man, even though they couldn't win, he was just consistent. He really was. He was able to perform at a high level when it comes to a time crunch, when it comes to an under pressure. When he's put under pressure in the game, and he did it. He did it in this game, especially against a 49ers team who's stacked offensively and defensively in Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, and he shows that he's just been a consistent quarterback his whole career. And the Rams really thrive under him. They do. Kyron Williams, I think he's a top running back. He could make top 5 in the upcoming weeks. I have to look at the stats to see if he could possibly make it into this week, and through week 3. But man, he just looks good. He had 24 carries, 89 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and one of them was receiving. I think he's just a young, gritty player. He had a fantastic rookie season, and coming into this season, he's doing it again. He's doing it again. He made the Pro Bowl last season. I think he'll do it again this year as well. And just the overall efficiency of both quarterbacks. Brock Purdy, and we look at Brock Purdy's career, this guy came from being the last pick in the draft, the Mr. Irrelevant, to being one of the best quarterbacks to play right now. And this is literally a rabbit in a hat type of scenario. Like, the odds of Brock Purdy even being as good as he is. I know he's surrounded by a huge squad in Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Juszczyk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. I know he's surrounded by them. But the fact that he's the last pick in the draft, and he's performing at this high of a level compared to someone like Bryce Young, who's the first pick in the draft and may not have the best core. He has Adam Thielen, who is such a fantastic and lovable player. He was with the Vikings. He was a Pro Bowler. He's over here in Carolina doing the best he can, and he's such a lovable guy. And then in Deontay Johnson, who is a solid wide receiver, DJ Chark, he has players. He does. He has players. He can't win, and he can't perform. That's why I think Bryce Young is a bust. But Brock Purdy being the last pick in the draft and performing at such a high level, normally the last pick in the draft would get cut before the season even begins. But he's a Pro Bowler. He's a potential All-Pro type of quarterback, and he just continues to do it. And he continues to prove his legacy as a statement to observe throughout the remainder of his career. They're going to potentially win a Super Bowl in the upcoming years. I think they have the pieces. Deebo Samuel, I think he's an absolute beast. He didn't play last week, but he's been playing at such a consistent level, which has made him just the Pro Bowler and the All-Star, All-Pro type of player that he usually is, that we saw in 2019. And in George Kittle. George Kittle is so valuable. Made with the All-Pro first team tight end last season. And he's just an incredible guy, and he fits so well with the 49ers, so well. Juwan Jennings, just these surprise attacks that keep hitting them. Juwan Jennings, what a game for him, and what a game for the 49ers, even though they lost. It was a fun weekend of football. That's what I have to say. A fun weekend of football. Packers beat the Titans, and Malik Willis, after being traded for a 7th-round pick, goes into Nissan Stadium and just embarrasses the Tennessee Titans. The Titans have a lot to think about. Will Levis, is he the guy? It's only week 3, but so far he's just not progressing at all. It may be baby steps of progression, but that's not enough for the Tennessee Titans. The offseason they had, the type of offseason they had where they went to go get Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd and Tony Pollard and the defense that they've created, they just really haven't shown that they are the real deal. And I don't think they are the real deal right now. And I think a big part of that has to do with their quarterback and Will Levis. But it's only week 3. I'm not going to shut off Will Levis yet until it comes to week 8 and above. But right now, Will Levis is the problem. It could be coaching, but Will Levis is just not making very good decisions, and he's really hurt that team and what their potential could be. But that is the end of the podcast. I hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, please subscribe. Subscribe to my YouTube. This is the first YouTube video up on the Off the Ball YouTube channel. Go subscribe to that. Follow my TikTok at Off the Ball podcast, and follow my Instagram, Clay Balla. Follow my Twitter, Clay Tillman. Follow all my socials. I appreciate y'all listening. If you did, also rate the podcast. That really helps me a lot. Thank y'all for listening, and I'll see you next time on the Off the Ball podcast. Have a good day.